Harga ayam kayangan di Sabah
diturunkan harganya.
Menumpukan isu kos sara hidup.
Krisis inflasi serta kos sara hidup yang tinggi pada ketika ini membebankan peniaga.
Peningkatan kos sara hidup yang tinggi akibat ketidakstabilan ekonomi yang melanda dunia kekal menjadi isu utama yang menghimpit masyarakat.
Malaysia is a growing nation with consistent income growth. Rising cost of goods and services, particularly for basic needs such as food, housing and transportation, make the cost of living problem inevitable for Malaysian households. So, what is the cost of living? Cost of living refers to the amount of money needed to cover basic expenses such as housing, food, healthcare, transportation, education and other daily necessities. It reflects how expensive it is for an individual or household to maintain a certain standard of living in specific location. The cost of living in Malaysia has been steadily increasing, affecting households across different income levels. Prices of everyday essentials such as groceries, fuel and electricity have risen, while wages have not always kept pace, putting financial pressure on many families. So, in this video, we will discuss about analysis for cost of living from year to year, what are the main causes for rising cost of living in Malaysia, who will affect the most and how will they cope with it, comparison cost of living between urban families and rural families, and lastly, solution on how to reduce these problems.
The issue of rising living costs has become increasingly significant in Malaysia, affecting individuals, family and the overall economy. Over the past decade, Malaysia has experienced steady increases in the price of essential goods, housing, transportation and everyday services. According to Malaysian Department of Statistics, recent data shows interesting trend in 2025, noting a 3.5% rise in living costs compared to last year in 2024, which is 3.2% due to inflation and higher utility tariff. Department Statistics of Malaysia also reported that this year's rising cost of living is primarily driven by price increases in several categories, including food and beverages, accommodations, services, personal care, education and insurance, and also financial services. As we can see, nowadays the price of a tray of 30 grade A8 eggs rose from 13 ringgit 50 cent to 14 ringgit 90 cent. First and foremost, inflation. Inflation is the increase in the price of goods and services over time. Inflation cannot be measured by an increase in the cost of one product or service, or even several products or services. Rather, inflation is a general increase in the overall price level of the goods and services in the economy. According to Bernama, Malaysia's inflation rate increased 1.5% in September 2025, with the index point standing at 135.2 as against 133.2 in the same month of 2024, said the Department of Statistics Malaysia. Following the release of its Consumer Price Index (CPI) for September 2025, Chief Statistician Datuk Seri Dr. Muhammad Uzair Mahidin said the average price of 197 unleaded petrol in September 2025 was 3 ringgit 19 per litre as compared to 3 ringgit 15 per litre in August 2025. Thus, this will be one of the reasons of increasing cost of living in Malaysia. Apart from that, tariff. Tariff is a tax imposed by one country on the goods and services imported from another country to influence it, raise revenues or protect competitive advantages. Most countries are limited by their natural resources and ability to produce certain goods and services, so they will trade with other countries to get what their population needs and demands. For instance, Malaysia now faces a 19% tariff on export to the United States under executive order signed by US President that will lead to an increase of government expenses.
Now I will talk about who is most affected by the rising cost of living in Malaysia and how they are coping. First, the lowest income household, commonly called the B40, are hit the hardest. According to a survey, over 80% of B40 respondents agree that the cost of living has risen. Economists warn that inflation is outpacing wage growth, for many of them living very little disposable income. But it is not just the B40. The M40 middle income group is also under pressure. According to a study, many in the M40 feel they receive limited relief from government aid, since some programs are more targeted to lower income groups. A research paper even finds that spending pattern and indebtedness made the rising cost of living a serious problem among middle income households. On an individual level, some of the most affected are parents in low-income families, who may cut back on nutritious food or delay other spending to cover daily costs. Students are also being affected, especially from B40 families, whose families may struggle more with education, related costs, transport, and day-to-day living expenses. Lastly, small business owners, who face rising costs of raw materials, utilities, and may have to raise price, but that risk losing customers. So, how are these communities managing to survive? Firstly, cutting non-essential spending. Many households reduce spending on non-urgent items such as entertainment, eating out, or upgrading to more expensive brands. Secondly, taking on additional work or side income. Some people pick up part-time jobs, side businesses, or freelance work to make ends meet. Other than that, relying on government aid. Low and middle income households benefit from targeted assistance such as cash aid program like Sumbangan Tunai Rahmah and other support to help offset daily costs. Moreover, practicing stricter budgeting and saving, families plan their spending more carefully. They only buy what they really need and try to save a little each month. Lastly, improving financial literacy. Some experts encourage people to learn better money management, which is budgeting, financial planning, and long-term saving, so they can navigate rising costs more resiliently.
Cost of living, we talk about it every day, but not everyone lives the same reality. In Malaysia major city, Kuala Lumpur, Johor Bahru and Penang, the crisis feels loud. Price rise quietly and slowly. Food, transportation, basic services and especially rent, everything costs more than it did just a few years ago. According to the recent national data, the basic monthly cost required to live decently, which the Department of Statistics Malaysia called as BEEBK, is now 4,729 ringgit per household. In urban areas, the number is even higher, which is 5,040 ringgit. Yes, there are more jobs here, but salaries do not grow fast enough. Many urban families are now working longer hours or taking 2 jobs, not to get rich, but just to stay afloat. The numbers reveal something deeper. Urban households spend about 24 to 25% of their income in housing and utilities, compared to only 19 to 20% in rural households. They spend less on food, 17 to 18%, but only because so much of their income has already gone to rent. But when we move far away from the cities, the story changes. Rural Malaysians live with lower prices. A meal may be cheaper, rent may not exist after all, but their incomes are also lower. Department of Statistics Malaysia data shows the average basic living cost per household in rural areas is only 3,631 ringgit. But because rural wages are lower, even this amount is hard to reach. More than 60% of rural household income disappear into 3 essentials: food, housing and transport. They spend nearly 10% more on food than city dwellers. And with fewer hospitals, schools and services nearby, they pay with time, fuel and distance. Even their food costs are now almost comparable. 467 ringgit per person per month in urban areas versus 411 ringgit in rural areas, showing that inflation is no longer just a city problem. So, who suffers more? The truth is both. Urban families earn more, but lost their income to rising rent and living costs. Rural families pay less, but earn less, and still struggle to cover the basics. That's why states like Selangor, Kuala Lumpur and Penang now top the list as the most expensive places to achieve a decent living standard. But here's the twist. The cost of living is rising, even though inflation is relatively low. According to recent reporting, Malaysia's headline inflation rate is to just 1.4% earlier in 2025 and even dropped to 1.2%. It's lowest in over 4 years. Economists warn that even this moderate inflation feels painful because price increase in essentials like food and housing outpace the growth in wages. In short, the burden is not coming from wide inflation spikes, it's creeping steady and incomes are not keeping up. This is why the cost of living debate cannot be one size fits all, because behind every statistic, it is a different life story. Whether you live in the cities or far beyond it, the cost of living is not just rising, it's rising unevenly, and it's rising in a way that does not always show up in big inflation numbers.
The Malaysian government has introduced several initiatives to address the rising cost of living in Malaysia through wage reform, reduction of housing costs and targeted subsidies. A key measure is the implementation of the minimum wages in 2013, which has been strengthened recently with the introduction of the Progressive Wage Policy, BEEBK. This policy encourages employers to raise workers' wages based on skills, experience and performance to accelerate income growth, which has been too slow without policy intervention, and ultimately help Malaysians cope with increasing living costs. In addition, the government has also reduced the housing costs, making housing more affordable through programs such as the Housing Credit Guarantee Scheme, Rent-to-Own Scheme, BEEBK and Prima, all of which enables individuals to either own or rent homes at more manageable prices. Under Budget 2024, the government has also doubled the allocation for HCGS to 10 billion ringgit Malaysia, whereby it guarantees bank loan to applicants with irregular incomes. The government has also initiated a phased approach to targeted subsidies by discontinuing subsidies and price controls for chicken while continuing subsidy mechanism for grade A, B and C eggs, which aim to reduce subsidy leakage to foreigners and high-income groups. However, individuals also play a crucial role in managing the rising cost of living. One important step is by creating a detailed budget to gain better control over personal finances and manage inflationary pressure. By reallocating spendings from non-essential categories such as entertainment to essential needs such as groceries and healthcare, individuals can stretch their income further. Therefore, the impact of rising prices on their overall financial health can be mitigated. Moreover, individuals should also consider refinancing. With a high inflation and low interest rate on home loans, individuals can also save money on monthly interest by opting to refinancing their homes. For instance, if an individual's home is bought before 2010, chances are high that their home loans carries a higher interest than the rates currently offered by the banks. But individuals can also enjoy these low rates by refinancing. In conclusion, the rising living cost in Malaysia is escalating, marked by a 3.5% increase in 2025 due to inflation, which hit 1.5% in September 2025, and higher utility tariffs. This increase is reflected in the rising prices of essentials such as eggs, petrol, and external pressures like the new 19% tariff on Malaysian exports to the US. The rising living costs in Malaysia primarily burden the B40 and M40 groups, along with parents, students, and small business owners. The rising living cost affects both urban and rural families. Urban families struggle with high rent despite their high wages, while rural families struggle to meet lower basic costs due to lower income. Thus, the Malaysian government is tackling the rising living costs through wage reform like the Progressive Wage Policy (PWP), housing affordability programs, and targeted subsidies. Individuals must also complement the effort taken by the government and practice detailed budgeting and consider financial strategies such as refinancing home loans to mitigate the impact of rising prices in Malaysia.